Hi, this is Kath, and I'm helping my beautiful friend Helen write her book called Love Will Do Whatever It Takes. And what we didn't realise when we started doing it is what magic would come from her writing the book. And we want to share that with you. So have a listen. I'd like to welcome you to today.
All right, everybody. We've got Kathy, we've got Helen here, and we're live. Yeah. Woo! I can do that easy.
Okay, so today Helen and I are just going to have a chat and talk to you guys a bit about Helen's writing a book. So, Helen, tell me, why are you writing a book?
Why am I writing a book? It's been on my mind for probably about 5 years, because I think over the last 20 years of working as a practitioner and a therapist and telling people just little snippets of my story along the way as I was working with somebody one-on-one, or even working in small groups that I've done as well, that telling my story would trigger something for others, either one person or a group of people. And it's always been really good to be able to tell somebody what had happened to me and what I did about it and what came out of it, and how beautiful things do come out of it. Let's just go back. That it was important. I saw the power of telling my story and what it did for others. So I think that was always in the back of my mind. But I think about 5 or so years ago, I got a bit of a tap on the shoulder to maybe write a book. And when I first started looking at writing a book, the last thing on my mind was writing my story. It was going to be a book about inspiration. It was going to be a book about quotes, Hellenisms that I called them. I think I looked at all sorts of ways of doing it, except what usually happens to me, the actual way I was supposed to do it, right? I dance around the outsides and think, oh, it's about this and it's about this. And yeah, did some work on myself because I thought I was getting in my own way and there were subconscious blocks and all sorts of things going on. And I think that was just distraction as well. I went off and I learnt something else and yeah, worked with others, worked with myself.
So you said about 5 years ago you got the feeling that you needed to write a book. Well, what kind of was the impetus to really roll over to get into the point where you're like, okay, all right, I admit it's my story I need to tell?
That was 18 months ago. So there's a group here in Melbourne that help people write their books, whatever sort of books they are. And I knew I was getting in my own way, so I knew I had to just dive into a seminar that they were doing. And it was a half-day thing on why write a book. And it was during that seminar that I had a couple of little light bulb moments. But by the time the seminar was getting wrapped up and ready to finish, I had such an emotion surging through me that I couldn't even open up my mic and say thank you, because I was about to burst into uncontrollable tears. And to me, it was just something so significant. I had to write my story. Yeah. And it was powerful and overwhelming. It was like I was just opening up these floodgates. So I got off that call and I cried and cried and cried and cried and cried. And, it was just relief and wonder and overwhelm and everything all at once. And then I'd stop and have a bit of a breather, and then I'd just cry again and again. And from there, I got asked, their next step was to do a call with the husband. And it was in that call with that husband that I got, this just love will do whatever it takes. The theme of what, I sort of put to everything that had happened in my life. And it hasn't stopped since then.
So you did this seminar, you went, oh my God, I need to write my story. And then you sat down and wrote your story? Is that what happened?
No. Started to write it, and I'd write bits and pieces, and then I'd, get stuck. So then I'd push it away for a bit, and then I'd try it again, and then I'd write a bit more and I'd get stuck. Because I was going back so far in my past, I just figured if I started putting bits and pieces down, I'd fill in all the gaps. But it was just this swirling, massive information inside of me, all sorts of... I certainly remembered the significant bits, because I told people those significant bits a heap of times. But it was all the bits in between that I was struggling with. So I started to write a timeline, started to do the timeline. So I got my big whiteboard out and started going through... I had journals from so many of those years and started getting all the significant dates and putting them all in some sort of order. And I figured if I did that, then I would be able to get further into writing the actual chapters. No.
Didn't happen?
Didn't happen.
So this was how long ago that you started this?
18 months.
18 months, okay. So that's a long time.
Yeah. And it had little moments in between where I felt like I was internally putting pressure on myself, like, you better get this done, you should get this done. And I've realised that that's not how life works at all. So I've become very good at hearing that voice and just, telling it to go sit over in the corner. But I knew something, I knew I couldn't write it myself entirely. So I was trying to look at it in all sorts of different ways to figure out, well, how was I going to write it? What was the solution? You know?
So what was the solution? What happened?
Well, then I remembered somebody that I'd done a course with and a bit of tutoring with, from a business and mentoring sort of perspective years ago, this fella. And he came to mind, and I knew he'd written a couple of books. So, and I remembered him saying to me, Helen, he said, writing a book just takes you to a completely different level within yourself. And that sort of was ringing in my mind and thinking, he's been there, he's experienced it, so maybe I can connect with him. Yeah. So I gave him a call and left a message, and then we had a catch up.
So you said that you also started doing some speaking engagements. Was that before you started connecting with him, or did the speaking start to happen before then?
No, I connected with him first. So I connected with him early last year. And I had a 2-hour session with him where he just wanted to find out what it was I was looking for, how he could help, if he could help, all those sorts of things. And we were catching up at first once a week. And then, I said to him, I need more space and time in between. There's no hurry with this. And one significant thing that he did give me was getting the significant topics of my life and the story, and starting to put them all out on the wall. Yep. So, because what I'd said to him, I found it really hard. It was like I'd write on a piece of paper and I'd start writing that way and doing it by hand, and that was really hard because your hand gets sore. And then I'd do it on the computer and I'd type and I'd start doing it that way, but it was like then you get to different pages and you couldn't see back to where you were. It was like I really needed to see it all out in front of me.
Yeah.
And that's where he said what he did was get Post-it notes and post them all over the wall and start putting them into groupings of, what they were and how they related to each other. So I started doing that. I got coloured Post-it notes and I had my whole hallway covered in Post-its.
It's like a piece of art.
It was. It was incredible. There was stuff everywhere. And I did see that I could see it all in one look, which was really super duper, right? So that was good because then I could start to put things into some sort of sequence. And he said that he just started to get, these were all for one chapter, this group here is for another chapter. But as soon as I'd done all of that, and that took me a month or so to get all that out, it stopped again.
And so what was the next hurdle or trigger?
Well, I got to that point with him And that was about the time where I got asked to do the talk.
Okay.
To do the public speaking. That was May last year. I got asked to do a talk about my journey of living in the private.
So let's just give you guys a snapshot. 5 years ago, you went, I need to write a book. And then 18 months ago, something in you said, I'm going to do this course that's going to help me write this book. And then 6 months later, you were asked to do speaking, or was it a bit longer than that?
No, so 18 months ago, I did the author course.
Yep.
And it's May last year. So it was 12 months later.
Okay. So
Yeah.
12 months later, you then get started asked to do public speaking.
Yeah.
Have you, how did you feel about that?
About what?
When someone said, hey, Helen, come and talk to our group.
At first, overwhelmed, because my first thought was, my journey's been at 5 to 10 years in the making. How do I put that all in a talk? And I said no.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then what happened?
And then I slept on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I rang the woman back who asked me. I slept on it and I thought, well, I could probably do this because it wasn't about me. It felt like I was being asked by something higher than me to do this. And I suppose, as you'll all know along the way, I have had lots of knowing. I know, and I follow the no. Yeah, and it was really strong that something else was asking me to do this talk. So I rang her back, and she was lovely because she said, "Oh my gosh, Helen," she said, "I was so disappointed. I was so disappointed because I thought you would say yes." And I said, "Well, it was a bit overwhelming in terms of, how to put 10 years into an hour, but yeah, okay, I'll do it." And she started to plan where, and I started to look at what the content was going to be.
So it's just really cool. You were asked to write a book, and then you get asked to do a speaking event that's about summarising a part of what is going to probably...
Part of my life.
Yes, right? So it's like teaching you, hey, Helen, here's a part of the pathway for you to actually start to write your book.
Yeah, I could see that you had an epiphany while we were talking here, and you're waiting to get to that epiphany going, I've just realised something for you.
It was like the beginning of this. This next step, that elevated step of it.
Yeah, well, I can actually, and as we're going to get into more of this as well, but as I've been writing the book, I've realised that some higher power's been trying to get me to talk out to the public for quite a while, because 2019 I was going to Traralgon on a regular basis and with my chiropractics aligning people, and she wanted me to talk. She wanted me to do a talk, and she was going to book out the venue next door. I had no bloody idea what I was going to be talking about at all, so I kiboshed it.
Yeah.
And she crucified me for doing that. Yeah. She turned on me for some reason. And all it was because it was like, okay, everybody seems to think I've got something to talk about, but I wasn't very clear about what I was supposed to talk about.
Yeah.
So I've started putting other pieces together in the past that were actually asking me to do the same thing, to talk about my life. Yeah?
Yeah.
But I didn't see it as talking about my life at the time. The living in the private showed me how I could talk about my journey and what I'd done, and other people found that important.
Yeah. So tell me about the magical moment of writing that speech.
To be honest with you, I can't really remember all of it. It all just, for me, it was just looking at, I just had number of different pages in front of me, and the pages I just put down, I did this and this and this. I looked at my health, I looked at my home, I looked at the systems out there. I just put different headings to different topics, and then started to just put little descriptions underneath of what I talk about, and that just became like 20 pages, I think, that were just prompts and ideas to talk about.
Yeah. So you did this talk, and then what was the ripple effect of doing this talk?
well, everybody kept creating more. As soon as I did the first talk, somebody created the next talk. Can you speak again? Can you speak at this venue? Oh, and they were going to organise the people. I didn't have to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
That was what the incredible thing was. It was like I just had to turn up.
Yeah.
Everybody else was running around creating venues for me and creating people to attend. And and it just got a life of its own.
Yeah.
And I just had to turn up.
So where did that then take you? Like, did it take you back to writing the book, or what sort of happened?
Well, it sort of branched things off for a little while, and it needed to.
Mm-hmm.
I was still periodically seeing my friend to help me with writing the book. But I have to say that, I'd come away from those last couple of sessions thinking, this isn't working.
Mm-hmm.
There's something not quite right here, but I wasn't prepared to finish work with him. The book had sort of sidetracked to me doing the public talks, and then people from those public talks wanted to know how to learn what I'd done. So that then became small groups that I started seeing from home, that then turned into step 1 and step 2, and then became step 3 that I was putting together for others. So that then turned into, I better have a look at a website. That then turned into the man who was helping me with the book, helping me organise the website, and then suggesting to me that I needed to get a membership happening and a community happening. And without me even realising, I started following what he loves to do.
So what happens in your life, Helen, when you start doing that?
Start doing what?
Following what other people rather than following you.
What happens?
Yeah.
It's a good question. I think I just end up starting walking up a garden path.
Mm-hmm.
It's not my path.
Yeah.
Yeah. And things just start getting off track.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They start getting hard as well. It's like, I don't have any great joy in setting up a website. I don't have any great joy in creating a community and a platform to have a community on. It all gets hard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's the simplest way to say it. And what I've found for myself is when I'm walking my path, nothing's hard.
Yeah. So what made you, was there an aha moment, or what kind of got you to the point where you're like, I have to do something different?
Well, I learn a lot of things. And I think that when I get off track and I'm starting to walk somebody else's passions and things that they love to do, I have these moments where I kind of, you can hear the mind saying, but maybe this is what you're supposed to do. And maybe you just need to really learn about the websites, and you need to learn about, the online group and, and IT and technology and things like that, just for a little while. There's always some little murmur going on from the mind.
Some way to justify your current
Some
actions.
way to justify what I'm doing, because it's like I'm not liking it. So, yeah, I got dragged along to a certain point, and I certainly met a woman who was fabulous at doing websites, and I now know that I can just say to her, hey, set up a page and put this on it. And I don't have to think about that. I don't have to do that. She can do that.
Yeah.
So the book kind of came to a screeching halt, and this was all starting to take over everything, and I wasn't enjoying myself that much.
Yeah.
So then what happened?
Yeah.
So the talks had a life of their own, as I said, and they went right through to May, so June, July, August. There were 3 months of really, doing talks on a regular basis to big groups all the time.
Actually, can I ask, what changed about yourself doing that? So a 3-month period of time, you'd never really talked about your story. How did it change you sharing your story just to those groups, like those portions of your story?
Well, everything flowed. And it wasn't so much about changing me. I could step straight into that. That was easy. And it all flowed. From having done the talks, people then said, what's next?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I've given you a resources sheet. Go do the paperwork. This is the next step that I did. But then people wanted to know how to do that. So I just had a bit of an epiphany. Well, I'll do small groups from home. And that started to work beautifully. I had up to 200 people through my home in a matter of a few months doing step 1, that I called it. And then people wanted to know the next step that I did as well. So I created a step 2. All of that happened with great ease. Yeah. And then I started teaching step 2 to a big group, and that worked beautifully. And that just started to recreate itself over and over again. So
you said you weren't happy though. Like there was a part of you that it wasn't fulfilled, or what? Like
in all of that I was.
Yeah.
In all of that I was. It was just the direction that it seemed to be taking with the guy that was helping me with the book.
Okay.
With putting it all into, he wanted to create community for himself. So he was, without realising it, was imposing that on me as well. And I didn't want to create community.
Okay, yeah.
I'd seen how it does it all by itself. People were already doing all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't want to do that, but I certainly wanted to contribute in my own way to those communities. Yeah. So that's what was getting really hard. The book had gone onto the back burner, and I was focusing on things that I didn't love.
Okay.
I had no joy in at all.
Yeah. So did you have like a wake up in the middle of the night epiphany of, oh my gosh, I need to walk away from this guy and go do something else? Or what was kind of the impetus for the change that you made?
Well, I think for a few months towards the end of last year, I just had nothing to do with him at all. There was no need. There was no need at all, because I think I'd already started to figure out that he wasn't providing me with, other than telling me to put those topics on the wall and to set it all out and be able to see it and all that. That was great. That was great. But after that, it started going off a different track. And I'd said to him originally that I really wanted somebody that was going to hold me accountable. If I wasn't doing certain things and stuff, to address it. And I'd completely forgotten about that. So it was time to start reviewing it. And that's what I started doing internally. I started looking at what I'd first asked for and what I was getting now. And it was something completely different. Yeah. So I knew something wasn't right, but I had to, when I'm in two minds about something, it's always been a great rule of thumb for me. I don't do anything.
Yeah.
I don't make a decision if I'm, sort of not clear. I have to wait until I'm like, yes, finish it with him, or yes, stop doing this and start doing that. So along came Christmas, and just after Christmas, I decided to go for a drive. It was another knowing. It was this whim. I have to go and see my cousins. Yep. Couple of little texts and messages, all set off by a crazy midnight text I'd got from an older cousin of my mum's, just set off a chain of events. And I had to go see my cousins. So I let them know, and I hit the road. And it was...
Hang on. When you say you were going for a drive, it wasn't like you were just going 2 hours tootling down the road.
No.
How long was your drive?
3,500 Ks. Yeah.
Each way?
Yeah. No, in total.
Oh, just in total. Okay.
Just in total, yeah, over 6 days. I had a 6-day period to do it.
Yeah.
Because I had to be back for other things, but I knew I had to do it. Yeah. And yeah, so I hit the road, and I drove for hours and hours and hours some days. But I had so much time to think and just be in the quiet and be on the road. And in that space, you don't even realise just how much you're processing as you're driving along. And I didn't realize how many epiphanies I was going to have along the way, those aha moments and beautiful moments of crying as I was drying, just having epiphanies about things. And it was a cathartic drive. I came to terms with and reevaluated everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Turned everything in my life upside down and inside out, and got clear.
So, you come home, and then what happened next?
I knew that I wasn't going to work with that fella anymore. It was done. And I do like to take my time to, address things with others in a kind way, in a loving way as well. I pride myself on just doing it with a very good moral compass. And so I'll kind of do an email to somebody, I'll think it through or write it through, or look at it from all sorts of different angles and take as much time as I need until I get it right. And then send him off a really loving and kind email saying that the journey had been wonderful and I found myself a little off track and heading in the wrong direction, and thanked him for his time and stuff, and said that, I was going to continue on and do it on my own. No, that's not quite true. I told him that the other epiphany that I'd had was that I was going to approach you about writing it with me, because part of the journey, the drive, had given me the understanding that it was in combination with the right person. And I'd started remembering how you loved writing, how, over the years we've talked about your love of writing, and you've written your own, books and things like that. There was something in that. Yeah. And I'd kind of known that for a little while, but I was waiting for the timing and the right time to talk about it. And of course I had talked about it with you, and you were like so excited, like, yeah, yeehaw, let's go. So that became the impetus to write to him as well, and to let him know that I'd found the solution. Yeah. And, thanked him for his time, but said I've found the solution. And just the first get together that we'd had was, me talking to you and telling you the story, and you crying about my story. And I'm like, I'd told it heaps of times, but I'd kind of, to hear how other people hear your story is a whole different bag. Yeah. A whole different thing. And then you would type down what that story was about, and you then read it back to me, and I started crying as I'm reading just more depth about my story. So I put all that anyway into the letter to him, and it was like he got sacked, right? It was like, time to move on. I've found the solution. Yeah. Yeah. And what I realised from starting to write with you and have conversations with you is that when I immerse myself into my story, I'm in it. I can't logically and structurally and whatever, I can't see it from any other point of view. Yeah. And that's really important for me, to go there and be in that. But you've got the gift of writing about what you see is happening to me. And I think doing what you're doing right now, asking me questions that make me go, oh, I've got to go a little deeper, or I've got to look at it a different way, which then gives the whole story just this incredible dimension.
Oh my God, it's phenomenal. Like, just, it's a real honour to be able to share this with you. Like, just the ripple effect it's having on my life is just phenomenal.
Well, that's the other thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's becoming, it's like your witness. This is about being a witness.
Yes.
It's just something.
Well, and I'm helping you to anchor it here.
But being a witness then started to unravel things in your life as well.
Absolutely.
Which we go right back to the beginning of this discussion today, where I said, why write a book? Well, because I saw that my story on, an individual or groups would have some significance and do something, shift someone, show them something. And that's exactly what's been happening with you as we've been writing.
Absolutely. Beyond anything that I could have imagined. I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll help Helen write a book.
Yeah.
Not
How
realising.
hard can this be? Not knowing it was going to turn you inside out at the same time.
It's unraveling my life in the most beautiful way.
Yeah.
Because I need it desperately.
Yeah.
Not desperately, but, to really...
But that's also giving me, what's the word I'm looking for? When it's your story, so it's my story, I know that I've been through a hell of a lot. And that's a given, yeah. But when you start witnessing what it does for somebody else, that's extraordinary.
Yeah.
Yeah. How it influences and changes somebody else, that's extraordinary. You can't put a price on that. You can't value that. Yeah. But it gives me, it shows me how important it is.
Yeah. Yeah. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
So read this out, because I think it's nice for everyone to hear.
Oh, do you think? 3:00 in the morning, something was waking me up. So the book, this is what I wrote about what I'm writing. I'm writing about how living my life changed me. Yeah. So all the stories and all the people and all the cycles in my life changed me. And changed my world. So as I'm starting to revisit everything, I'm starting to see the ripple effects of how, because I was willing and taking full responsibility to change things in my life, how it changed everybody else around me. And you'll see as we go into the book, some people changed readily, but most people kicked and fought and screamed and blamed me and all sorts of things. Yeah. And as we were just saying then, the next step to that is, so if I tell everybody out there about how living my life changed me and changed my world, then for everybody out there, as they're listening to me tell the story, it'll change their life and ripple out and change their world as well. Yeah. And for anybody out there that's scared of change, you better get over that. You better get over that, because we're here to do exactly that. We're not here to be the same person. I've reinvented myself every 7 years of my life, my whole life. Yeah. And at one point I told you about it, I had 4 of my driver licenses, and I looked completely different in each one.
Yeah.
Completely different in each one. And I've known for a long time, one of my knowings, we are here to change, because through change we evolve. Yeah. And change everybody else.
Well, and that's when the magic happens. That's when your life becomes magical, when you surrender to the change.
Explain that one for me.
When you stop trying to hold on to everything and try to keep it the way that you think it should be, you're losing. There's nothing. There's no space, right? There's no room for anything magical to come in.
Note to everybody right now, it sounds like Kat's talking from personal experience here.
But as soon as you start to open up and as soon as you start to embrace that change, then it just becomes easier. You can breathe. You can expand yourself. Things that you were knocking on your door that you were oblivious to are suddenly there, and your path is easier. You can walk it simply.
Yeah, everything starts to flow.
Yeah.
Because it's like a stream all heading in one direction. And I knew this years ago, because it was like as soon as things would become hard or would feel like it wasn't quite working out, and I don't know, I'll find more of these bits and pieces as I go through the story, but I knew when I was off track.
Yeah.
I knew when I was off track, and that's how I used to explain it to people too. It was like I just sort of do, here's one path heading straight ahead, and you're just off here a bit. You're 40 degrees off over here somewhere. And what does that feel like? Well, it's hard, it's tough. It's like pushing against the stream. It's, it's not working right, and it's not flowing, and all sorts of other terms. And I would just have to bring myself back on track.
Yeah.
Yeah? And that's not always clear. It's not always clear. And you don't always have the self-awareness to check in and go, oh, whoops, I've woken up this morning and gone, geez, the last 3 months I've been off track.
Well, and then there's so much of the mind gets involved in that whole story. You need to shift, and you need to get back on track. But then your mind's like, but I've dedicated so much time to this, and blah, 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 and I've got this here and this here.
And who says this isn't the right path,
But it's all baloney, right?
Yes.
It's because everybody knows. I don't care how asleep you are. There's still something inside you.
Well, and I think, though, the other thing, the important part to all of that is that most people have no idea what it's like to be in flow and to stay there, because it's beautiful. Yeah, everything works.
Yeah,
there's no struggle. There's it's just everything's working in with you and through you. And unfortunately, we've been pushed off that path, and we get continually pushed off that path, and we've been programmed to think that life is hard and tough, and you've got to work hard, and all those great little memes that go with that. And also, when you start getting on path and everything is working with ease, there's a part of you also that shits yourself about that.
Because then you're like, oh my God, what's going to go wrong? Because everything's good, and now I've got to mess it up,
But I can categorically say that we are here to absolutely create heaven on earth, and to do it with great ease, without having to plug into half the bullshit that we think we have to. What if we're not here to work? What if we're not here to worry about money? We're not here to do any of that sort of stuff. But that's such, we talked about before with being 40 degrees off. That's like a 180 degree off path. Like, that just really messes with people to think that. Even the whole concept about being healthy. I rememremember years ago, somebody said, what does a healthy body feel like? Nothing. Is the answer. Nothing. Because there's no aches and pains. There's no need for the body to signal anything else. So it feels like nothing.
Yeah.
And that's a concept that when I first heard that was like, what? What the hell?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what does a beautiful life feel like? Extraordinary, joyful, wonderful, and you look forward to the next bit and the next bit. But that can seem like a 180 degree turn for some people as well.
Oh, that's right. And that's, I think, the power of this book. Because this book takes them by the hand and shares your stories. And it's just a gentle realignment. Each chapter, each story, it's just a gentle realignment.
Yeah.
Some will be like epiphanies for people, and other things it'll just unravel.
Yes.
Unravel them and the stories and the programming without them even being aware of it.
Yeah.
Because that's the power of you.
Yeah.
Like, that's a part of you. Spent so much of your life cleaning yourself up. Sorting your stuff, going through the stories. The stories were you finding you and living you.
Yeah.
And bit by bit, it's just I think that's the pivotal aspect. You're clean now. Like, if you'd written your story 5 years ago, it wouldn't have the power that it has now.
Yes. Yes, I think talking to the people last year signalled that the degree that I've cleaned up my stuff. Yeah, I don't carry the baggage around anymore. And people during those talks felt that.
Yeah.
They absolutely felt the clarity. And I think what you said before, it's important that people realise that you keep listening to us, having these conversations, and we're going to start sharing some of what the book's about and things like that too. Be prepared to unravel, because everybody out there needs to get rid of their stories, their stuff, their baggage, whatever it is you want to call it. We're not supposed to be walking around carrying it around at all. Yeah. It's time to clean up.
Absolutely.
and clean it out.
And it's not as hard as you think it is. Your
No, it's
brain
not.
makes it, oh my God, it's insurmountable, but it's not. It's just one thread. You're just pulling one thread.
Yep.
And then that's when the magic starts to happen.
Yep.
Right? And that's the beauty of this book.
Yeah.
So that's the Helen and Kath
Fabulous.
chat for today.
Thank you very much.
And tune in for the next episode.
Excellent.